Hello, and welcome to the Devlog. I hope you're ready. The reason for all these puns, not that there needs to be one, is that I finally decided on the name for this engine I've been developing. The Dough Engine, bringing it in line with a naming convention I've held for a while now. Oh, this? My Switch name? Ah yes, you must be recognizing me as one of Europe's top Splatoon players. Oh ladies, please, control yourselves. But you didn't come here for my crummy jokes. You came here for... So let's get into how all that happened. It all started with a problem in my tile maps. You see, this behaviour is correct. Bullets should not be able to go up a cliff face. Speaking of correctness, there's a real lack of it over here, but I'm not getting into that now. Here is the problem. Bullets should be able to go down the cliff and then be above any enemies at the bottom. But as this is a fully 2D game, both in code and in theory, there's no easy way for me to fudge this. I needed to change how my entire level structure worked in order to have multiple tile maps on top of each other.
It's time to rework the tile system. Again!
Oh, my hubris. And while I was down there, I couldn't help myself but to rework a bunch of other stuff as well, like how the window draws things. We'll get on to that. There were a few errors here and there that needed fixing for the tile maps, but overall, that was a non-issue. The issue wasn't even changing between maps, it was a bit more subtle than that. You see, the way maps used to be drawn, I would put all the tiles in a list, and then I would count from 0 to the size, drawing the tiles one by one. As part of the change to the window, now I'm putting it in a large stack. Tiles go in and out the same way. You can't choose a random tile anymore, it has to be the one at the top of the stack. Here's the problem. I never removed the counter. This means that as the size of the stack was going down, the counter was still going up. Ooh, and now you've only drawn half the screen, with the other half still stuck in your stack. Now the next frame comes on. You now have 150% of a frame in your stack, and so you get 3/4 of it drawn to screen. In a fraction of a second, you have a full frame drawn to screen, and so you wouldn't notice normally. However, now you have an entire frame's worth of junk sitting in your stack. This isn't a problem if you go into a larger map. Larger map, more tiles, bigger junk stack, frame still gets drawn. The problem is, when you now move on to a smaller map, you start drawing some of that junk. And that's all been deleted. So it shits the bed and crashes. I took a quick Splatoon break. Another one. Another one. Another one. And hopped right back to it, leaving no stone unturned. And finally I found and patched the problem. Here we have it. Full, multi-dimensional tile maps that you can move up and down on. However, what if I wanted to make a layer transparent, so that I can still see the player when they're underneath it? As I went down this rabbit hole, issues with stacks and frames would be the yeast of my concerns. Another change to my game window was that instead of drawing directly to the window, you now draw to a texture, which is then later drawn to the window. You can add more textures to this pipeline, allowing you to add some nice shaders for cool post-processing effects. Problem though, is that now you have more cameras to deal with, and when you put a camera in the wrong place, you end up with something like this, where the window camera and the texture camera is in the wrong place, so the window's not drawing what's on the texture, and the texture isn't moving. Now you're not erasing what was on the last frame, you're just drawing over it, and this soup is what comes out of it. But just these few textures aren't enough. If I want to draw tile layers transparently on top of other ones, those two layers need to be made transparent together. Otherwise you can end up with this weird blotching, which looks pretty ugly. This means that I need to draw everything from top to bottom, which has the unintended side effect of hiding everything in your top layers, like you can see in this video here. It's hidden, just like the audio, because this frickin' idiot didn't turn his microphone on. I swear to God, these amateur YouTubers. So, I need to draw everything onto a texture, then draw the last texture onto that, then render that to the texture, and then do all that again. Doing this will let me squish the layers down and oh, fuck, it's a nightmare. Yep, here it is, what you're all waiting to see. I was trying to draw a sprite to the texture while that same sprite was using that same texture, and it turns out the GPU just doesn't like me doing that very much. Combine that with the window and texture's cameras being off, and you end up with this lovely echo chamber of... Now, I know some of my audience aren't computer scientists, and so to explain things briefly to you, this is what we call a complete and utter mess. In the end, I solved this by giving each layer its own texture, which sounds great and dandy, till you realise I'm automatically generating the maximum 255 layers for each window, which wastes about a gigabyte of video memory. I'll have to go in and fix that all someday. But if you combine it with a quick transparency system that I put together, you get this effect here. All that effort, and I bet someone playing this isn't going to notice it. They're just going to be like, oh yeah, that's what happens. Why the fuck do I do this? And with that, another massive rework has been done. There are some other bonuses to this rework as well, but I would have to hook in all that data by hand, and I'll be damned if I do that. I don't have the systems in place yet, so you'll see that next time. Trust me, you can expect it to look a lot more pretty than this sort of poopy green. I hope you'll join me for it all. And do all that YouTubey stuff like liking and subscribing. I've been doing this for 7 months now, and I have less subscribers than my friend who uploads bus time lapses. No offense to him or the bus time lapses. Apparently it's the quality content that people want. I just find it pretty serial.